Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fratello Talks. I'm your host Nacho, and today I'm joined by my colleagues
RJ
and
Thomas.
and we're going to be taking a look by popular demand. Actually, this is a viewer suggestion at some of the greatest watch bracelets. We're going to have also a bit of a look at what makes a watch bracelet good and features that we enjoy in watch bracelets. Maybe also list some dishonorable examples of not so good bracelets. We'll see. But of course, before we do that, let's do a bit of a wrist check. RJ, what's on your wrist today?
I'm wearing my Speedmaster Caliber 321, also add white or jean cernan,
Very nice.
on a very nice flat link bracelet.
There you go.
Yeah.
Lovely Omega bracelet.
Yeah.
Thomas, how about you? I don't think this is going to shock anyone.
No, I'm wearing my, it's a different color.
True.
I'm, as always, wearing my
We now go to the commercials.
Exactly.
And roll the hands.
the VPC type 37HW.
Very cool.
In green this time. But
does the green have a special name?
It does, forest green.
Forest green. Very nice. Cool.
Match it with a forest green jacket for today, so it should be on
Good
point.
stuff. Good stuff.
But this time it will play a bit of a role in the story because obviously I have some feelings about bracelets, and which is why I wanted to make my own, unlike most micro brands. So
Feelings.
there will be some. I have feelings, yeah.
Perfect.
So there will be some. I'm sorry if you don't want it, but there's a little bit of VPC talk there.
That's actually part of the reason why you're here. You have experience in doing this yourself and in lending some of your insights into creating your own bracelet in some way. So yeah, that's part of the reason why. I'm also wearing a watch on a bracelet. I was going to swap it off a bracelet. So this is my Seamaster 2254, and it's on this bracelet. It's of an older generation. It's not. I wouldn't call this an amazing bracelet by any stretch, but hey, I still like it. I still put it on every now and then before it inevitably ends up back on a NATO. But how do we feel about the topic? Do you consider yourselves bracelet guys? Do you prefer a bracelet? If a bracelet's available for the watch, do you go for it, or do you prefer a strap?
I'm a bracelet connoisseur.
Ah, very nice.
I'm a bracelet aficionado.
Yeah, no, but seriously, do you prefer a bracelet or do you prefer a strap?
I love bracelets.
Okay.
I hardly ever take them off.
I think I'm outnumbered here because I'm not. I'll try a bracelet every now and then, and I'll put a watch on a bracelet just mostly for aesthetics. But honestly, I find straps just a lot more comfortable. But still, I think it's a fun topic to discuss, of course. So what do you guys think as bracelet connoisseurs? I don't know if you're a bracelet connoisseur.
No, he's aficionado.
You're a bracelet aficionado. but as people who operate in the bracelet space, what do you think makes a good bracelet? What are some of the features you look into, and what's when you try a watch on that's on a bracelet, you go yay or nay? What are the things that play into it?
I think finishing needs to be really good. If a bracelet is too sharp, and I know I praised the Royal Oak bracelet in the past a lot, and I still do, but in the end, the bracelet on my Royal Oak Jumbo was quite thin, but also quite sharp in the end. Super comfortable otherwise, except for it has some sharp edges. So I think it's finishing that is important, that you don't have too many sharp edges or things that will annoy you or make you go bald on your wrist.
Shouldn't be a hair puller. That's a good point actually.
And it needs to be supple. Yeah. And I think that the Royal Oak is not that, to be honest. But I think a good bracelet needs to be supple. And I think a lot of bracelets that are like these like Milanese or the more woven kind of bracelet links, those are super supple, but often also hair pullers.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a difficult task. I also spoke to the designer at Bulgari. He said designing a bracelet is super, super tough. And you probably also know all about it, Thomas, but it's not easy being green, but also not to design a bracelet.
Shout out to the frog there.
Yeah.
I think it's true because there's a series of factors, right? You don't want it to feel too flimsy. You also don't want it to feel too sharp. In the end, you're putting it on your wrist. So it's in contact with your skin all day long, and it needs to be comfortable as well, right? I think that there's a comfort element to it. For me, part of why I don't like bracelets is the fact that throughout the day, as your wrist sort of expands and contracts, there's a little bit of, at some points, it can get a little bit uncomfortable. And of course, this bracelet being from early 2000s, there's no micro adjust. There's not even any micro adjust that requires tools. There's just a very useful dive extension. which adds about way too much for daily comfort.
And
but
with that bracelet, it's the Speedmaster style bracelet for the listeners, not viewers. It has a very long clasp.
Yeah, that's true.
And that also doesn't bring much comfort, I feel.
No.
I think the short clasp is also nicer to have or to wear.
Yeah, for sure. What's your take, Thomas? What makes a good bracelet in your eyes?
Yeah, I think comfort is a very important one. It has to be pleasant to wear, which is indeed suppleness, but also I feel shorter links tend to be nice because they allow a smoother curve around the wrist.
Yeah, more articulation.
Yeah, I think it's in the tiny details that also make or break a bracelet. Like I'm such a big pet peeve of mine is bad end links, where they look like an afterthought. Like they designed a watch, they picked perhaps a bracelet from a catalog or designed from somewhere, and then they sort of made an end link to connect it to as an afterthought. Or it's like a very coarsely one-piece milled thing that's so that usually really that can break a watch for me, like a bad end link. And the clasp as well, indeed. Like nowadays, we're all sort of so specification obsessed that we need a toolless micro adjust. And some brands comply, but they do it in a clasp that's like twice a JLC reverso on the underside of your wrist, with 2 centimeters of micro adjust. Like you don't need that. Like make it compact, make it small. And that's, I think those things are quite often lost. And I brought a watch as a sample because for the viewers, not listeners, I'll be very descriptive. This is not the first watch you would think of when you think of a good bracelet. This is a 1976 Seiko Skyliner.
Cool.
So it's just a hand-wound Gada watch, basically.
Yeah.
And it's got this bracelet that's folded sheet metal.
Yeah.
It's got a tiny stamped clasp.
Yeah.
You can listen.
Yeah, this is some ASMR bracelet
as
rattle.
Rattly as they come. The thing is, this is enough.
Right.
It's extremely comfortable, and this has been around since 1976, and it works. I think we're overthinking it and over-engineering bracelets nowadays.
Looks a bit like a squarish oyster bracelet, and in fact, it reminds me.
Jubilee.
Jubilee, and it reminds me of the Jubilee on the oyster quartz.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it has a bit of that vibe.
Style-wise, and more angular.
It's
but
true
my point
that's
is
also a good bracelet.
They tend to over-engineer them nowadays. You get these really thick bracelets, and they're like, you can drive over it with a tank and whatever.
Yeah,
but because you do it every day,
I'll be dead. I'll be dead by that time. So come on.
If the tank's running you over, the watch is the last thing you're thinking about.
Yeah.
No, it's true. But at the same time, it's one of those things. Those bracelets do have that rattle and that sort of almost like perceived flimsiness. At the same time, no one's like, you're not flexing your wrist to break out of it. That would be very impressive if you did. But at the same time, there is that sort of flimsiness, which almost translates to it feeling a little bit cheap. And I think that at some point, and of course we've been kind of maybe avoiding the topic a little bit so far, but Rolex set a standard for what a bracelet should feel like and sound like, and that is very silent, very solid. There is something to... like every time I find myself here in the office, somebody brings in a Rolex, we see one, pick it up, and the first thing you say is, that feels, it feels a certain way, right? Everything is, the tolerances are so tight, there's just no rattle at all to the bracelet. And then even on the wrist, there are with some of the older ones.
The older ones.
But the newer ones at the moment, and if you have it open, of course, the flip lock is gonna rattle around a little bit. But there's something very solid feeling. And I feel that people look to Rolex as a standard setting brand, and perhaps that's why bracelets these days have become a little bit more, sort of rugged, sacrificing comfort in favor of that. But I think that, Rolex, like you say, it's maybe it steps in the wrong direction.
Well, Rolex is one of the very few who does that well, I think, striking that balance. But some other brands sort of take it to the next level, and it's just too thick, too bulky. It doesn't look elegant. It doesn't feel elegant. That's why I take this as example. It's just the thinness, the slenderness, the small clasp. It doesn't feel necessarily luxurious, but it's so comfortable, and it's really good looking because it just blends onto your wrist somehow.
For sure.
But it took Rolex also quite a while, because I remember that in the 2000s, a lot of people were complaining why Rolex could not get their bracelet act together. And that only changed with the introduction of the ceramic models, basically. And before that, it was all rattly bracelets. It took a long time before they had the solid end links.
Yeah,
the clasps were like
90s,
Coca-Cola
right?
can kind of bracelets materials, but I think they really fixed that on all. It's the Precedent, the Jubilee, and the Oyster.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're all impressive.
Yeah.
If you had to say top 3 bracelets right now, off the top of your head,
Precedent.
the President bracelet from Rolex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jubilee.
Okay. Also Rolex. Shout out.
Oyster.
And Oyster. There you go. So for you, Rolex really has
they
killed the
they nailed it down, I think.
Okay.
And especially the Precedent bracelet is super comfortable. Like you say, it's really relatively small or short links.
Yeah.
So it's a super supple bracelet as well.
Yeah.
I think the hidden clasp is awesome.
Yeah.
That you have, that you don't have this bulky thing going on.
that sits underneath and lifts up the back end. Yeah.
Because I would love to say a Royal Oak bracelet because I really love the looks of that.
Yeah.
But it's not the most comfortable bracelet I ever had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And Thomas, for you, top 3, barring VPC, of course,
Well-
I'm sorry, but top 3 bracelets, perhaps that's one, the Seiko
No.
Skyline.
It's actually the same list as RJ.
Really?
I mean,
okay.
there's very little doubt about it. Like, there's very few watches, even at 10 times the price of Rolex watches, that feel that specific way.
Mhm.
And then there are things you could still improve, which is, sorry, I'm going to pull it to VPC anyway, which is what I tried to do after all. Because if you look at the end links, for instance, on a Rolex, they're still milled out of a single piece.
Mhm.
So what I tried to do with these is to actually make them 2 pieces, so that you get this perfect continuation of the links.
Right. That it doesn't
Because
feel
the
like
actual end link is also separate links.
Right.
And those are tiny little details that I personally really enjoy, but from a technical and a feel perspective, I have to.
But this is purely about comfort, right? This is finishing in the end, the end links.
This is aesthetics.
Aesthetics. But for aesthetics, I can name another list of bracelets that I really love. But I think in terms of overall, I really would stick to the Rolex ones.
So for my list, I would include I would probably say something from Rolex or just Rolex bracelets, but also I would have to put in there the original Tudor Pelagos bracelet with the expanding clasp. I think that's really nice. With this sort of spring-loaded. Yeah, I think that maybe also gives away the fact that I'm not that much of a bracelet guy.
That always feels flimsy to me. Omega did it as well, and the old flat link bracelets. They have spring-loaded links. But it also always feels like, ooh, this is going to snap at some point. Never did, though.
Another one that I would also put in there would be the current Speedmaster bracelet. I think that Omega really did an amazing job with that. I think that updating it from what it was before, which was essentially this,
it's the same,
into what it is today. And then, of course, even iterating on the original that they reintroduced, going into having a micro adjust, toolless micro adjust, press to adjust. I think that they really did an amazing job, and hopefully it's something that we see then going across the range into other models. It could be really nice. And then third one. No, I've said Rolex and then Tudor and Omega, so I think I'll stick to those 3 for now.
Yeah, I mean, there are beautiful bracelets out there. The Moser Streamliner comes to mind, for example. Also, Ebel. We have
it's
some
a bit
Ebel,
of an Ebel, I was
but we also have some Ebel watches now in the office from the new collection. I think they did a good job, but I think in terms of comfort and finishing, it's Rolex, definitely.
Yeah. I do admit, though, that I think, Thomas, you're onto something when you point out the vintage bracelet vibes, because I have this 1961 Seamaster that has a beads of rice bracelet, which is, you can set it down and it almost collapses in on itself. It's the most rattly articulated thing ever, but on the wrist, sized correctly, it's incredibly comfortable. Yeah. But it's true that it feels almost not like a typical rugged modern bracelet. Not at all, but it's still very comfortable there. Cool.
And it's elegant. It's very good looking.
Yeah, for sure. I
have another weird pet peeve with bracelets.
Okay.
And this is a very practical thing. Most manufacturers sell them with all the screws with Loctite in them.
Right.
Oh, that's super annoying.
It's so annoying because by the time you've sized it, it doesn't matter anymore because you've broken it anyway. The Loctite, I mean, or the bracelet if you're unlucky. And you always get these messed up screw heads.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when I talked to my supplier for my bracelets and I said, whatever you do, you're going to use the thickest gauge screw you can fit in and no Loctite. They were like, oh, no, we have to put in Loctite. It's like, no, you don't. Just don't do it. And it's such a massive difference in getting them sized properly. And you can always apply Loctite afterwards. Like if you really feel
some,
you need
some
that security.
Zinn watches, I think, come with a little bit of that blue Loctite, right?
It's so annoying. You just you end up screwing up the screw head.
Yeah, or having to like they suggest you warm it up or heat it up. But it is a bit fiddly. I do think that's a good point in general to talk about bracelet sizing and adjustment. There's obviously many brands have done many different things. I think for a long time, like in this bracelet, it was a pin and collar system, which is very fiddly, and of course, especially on the bigger. This is like a 3-link to the 5-link Seamaster bracelet. You have 2 little tiny hollow tubes that go into it, and it's just a nightmare, right? You taking it apart, it just falls apart. It's really really tricky. Borderline sort of watchmaking style work. What are some systems that you've seen that are quite impressive?
I have a major preference for just thick screws.
Single-sided flathead screw.
So you don't have to balance it on a second screwdriver or whatever.
That as well.
Yeah, because Omega does two little screws with a pin inside. Yeah. It's a bit annoying, to be honest.
Tudor, I think, currently does a similar thing where you have 2 flathead screws and you need 2 screwdrivers.
Yeah, that's even more annoying.
We've seen
one screw is good.
Yeah. We've seen some interesting ones. I don't remember which brand it was exactly. I think it's something that came out quite a while ago. But there was like a push button.
IWC.
That was
right.
Yeah. Those are interesting systems, but they don't seem to sort of work.
I think the problem there is everything you can push and use as a spring or whatnot, it catches dirt and it will at some point not work properly anymore.
That gives you a point of failure, right?
Yeah, it gives you a point of failure, so you need to make sure you keep it really clean. You do it in like a sonic bath sometimes, and but yeah, like you say, so one large screw is good. Yeah.
And then what about this quick release on a bracelet or just regular spring bars?
I don't like quick release pins. I know we sell commercial. We sell them in the shop.
Yeah,
and people love it. They want to have these quick release spring bars. But personally, I always take them out and put in normal pins.
Yeah. I agree. I've kind of slowly, they have slowly gained my trust because I've just ended up using them because of convenience sake. I swap straps quite often, so it's just handy to be able to just do it without the spring bar tool. But at the same time, nothing is quite as reassuring. Like if I'm gonna go do something where I feel that there is a chance of spring bar failure, then I would rather do what you do and sort of pull back, get the quick release spring bar out, and put something a little bit more rugged.
That is for me on a leather strap. So I think the systems on bracelets, I think there are some suppliers out there that really do a nice job.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think Rolex. I don't have a modern Rolex, so I don't know, but I don't think they do. Omega does it now.
Yeah.
I think they
Omega system is quite good.
300M is quite good.
Yeah.
And recently had some other watches here as well that offer that solution. I think it's quite nice. Yours also has the quick release, right?
Yeah. But I've done the really thick buttons, so you
and
don't get the
that's
fiddly,
the thing. Because if you have the on normal leather straps, it's quite thin and it easily snaps off. Exactly.
But I think with these things, like with toolless micro adjust and quick release, those are sort of like the modern watch lovers, who compare watches in spreadsheets. They're sort of the boxes you need to tick.
Yeah.
And I agree, it's nice to have, but it should always be secondary to a really well-made, elegant-looking, comfortable bracelet. It should never go at that expense. If you have a huge clasp and really clumsy quick release mechanism to get these 2 features, then it overshoots the mark.
I don't. But it can be a challenge, right? I mean, you have included a toolless micro adjust in the clasp of your watch, but it was quite interesting to hear about this from your perspective as well, going into it and talking to suppliers, because supposedly these quick adjust systems or toolless micro adjust systems, there's not that many out there. And some brands do actually share them, right? Like there's shared technology. Brands can pay into it, and then they can use this sort of technology. Obviously, brands like Tudor with T-Fit, I believe it's called, and others that have other proprietary systems. They can afford to do it. But of course, for smaller brands, there's a lot of crossover there, right?
Yeah, there's. On my watch specifically, there's 2 generic parts: the caliber, which is a standard Salida caliber, and the clasp, which is a customized existing clasp. The rest is custom parts. But those 2 parts, they're pretty much impossible to do unless you're
if you have to develop it.
Exactly. That's impossible. So you need to pick something off the shelf.
Yeah.
And then it's very hard. Most of these quick adjust clasps. They are super bulky, super long, and so I've spent a ton of time going back and forth and discussing, and I finally ended up with this, which is very elegant. It's very short, and it's only 5 millimeters thick. So from the outside, you would never think that there was a micro adjust in there. But I had two big demands. One was the compact size. Second was that it should be completely invisible. I absolutely hate it when you take out, you make it longer.
Oh, and you have
see
that,
this little gap, or you see the system come out. So I didn't want that. And that was just a major headache to get. And honestly, it's a very low-tech system. There's no springs or anything in there, which is really nice in terms of keeping it
just ratchets.
solid.
It's like a ratcheting system.
Yeah, you just sort of click it out, size it, click it back in.
Okay.
But it's not very smooth feeling. I can imagine, like, if you handle the rest of the watch, it feels very luxurious. And then the micro adjust is a bit like... But that's sort of like the one compromise I had to make in order to make it very reliable and still very nice and subtle. So.
The worst clasp I have in my own collection is from the Seiko Marine Master.
Oh, yeah.
SBTX001, but you have some other later references as well. And also the Grand Seiko divers, they still use the same clasp.
Yeah.
It has this extension that if you open the clasp, it comes out immediately.
Right.
So you can't control it. So you open the clasp, and if you open it too far, it unloads or unlocks, and then the extension comes out. It's so annoying. It looks so cheap.
Super fiddly.
But that's a company that, scalability-wise, they could easily fix that.
Yeah. Seiko is
so
famously not amazing at bracelets.
And the finishing is really good. The finishing of the bracelet as such, the links and so on, and how it's done, and also on the Grand Seiko ones, superb, really nicely done. Yeah. But the clasp on those divers is awful.
Yeah, it's true. It's really not good. I have this the mini turtle, and it has a very similar system where you have to. It doesn't work. It borderline. You look at it and you go, how did this make it out of a R&D department? It's just fiddly. It breaks your nail when you're trying to deploy it. It's not good. It's really not good.
Speaking of bad design in bracelets, there's also one. Tudor used to do this. It's a big problem. They fixed it now. But if the edge of the clasp is shaped like in a tip in a sort of a rounded point, it scratches the link.
You get marks.
Which to me it's completely ridiculous. Like, how can your own product scratch your own product in normal use? Now they fixed it. I had the same issue with mine because I have a rounded lip as well. So we're actually limiting the movement of that first link on the production model.
Right.
So you can't push it in.
Can't actually go into the edge.
Yeah, but that's another pet peeve of mine when you have this weird mark on those bracelets.
And speaking of pet peeves, and on the topic of clasps, of course, what about the dual deployant butterfly clasp? How do we feel about that? Especially when one side has a protruding lip where you can only close one side first and then the other side over it.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying.
That for me is like the worst. This is absolutely the
problem
worst.
I have with these double folding clasps, I think Cartier was one of the first to do it, is that on most watches that we get in today for review, they almost all have the same very generic double folding clasp. So it comes from some supplier of somewhere.
And you see it on anything from the PRX up to things that cost...
Like IWC Engineer. It uses the same kind of stuff. And I think, how can that be possible? Yeah. But because at least, again, with AP, with the Royal Oak, they did something nice with the clasp. It was nicely engraved, or they skeletonized that, the AP logo inside. That was super nicely done. But these are they look cheap and they feel cheap. I don't get it.
And even when you look back at something like your Constellations, right? They have this sliding thing so that the watch fits better over your hand and then it closes really nicely. Yeah. And it's not the most high-tech thing. It is still folded metal, but at the same time, at least it shows a little bit of, and even IWC Engineer bracelets once upon a time were quite nice. Yeah. Like the Clasp system was quite nice. And now they've gone to this default thing. You see also this dual butterfly clasp on something like a Laureato. And to me, it just doesn't feel like a solution for a high-end watch.
I think it annoys me more to have a clasp like that on my expensive watch than when it has a third-party movement these days. It annoys me so much that a clasp on a 15K watch is exactly the same as on a €1,000 watch. How can that be possible?
I have no idea, but
it's beyond my understanding.
It becomes an afterthought, and really, it's one of the key parts that you have to consider when when showing how how comfortable a watch is going to be and how well it's going to interact with your wrist. I mean, you're going to put it on, take it off just about every day, right? So, so let's do one final detail, because I realized as I opened this, there's no locking fold over, right? Like the Rolex watches will have that flip lock thing. I quite like that. I think that having that extra little measure of
only the divers
security.
had it at first, I think. So even the earlier GMTs didn't have it, only the subs and the sea dwellers. And then I think now most of them have it, I guess, except most sports watches.
The sports watches,
I think the non-sports watches still don't have it, but yeah, I think it's
I kind of like it to have it. I don't. It's of course the Present doesn't have it, and I think a lot of Jubilees also don't have it.
No.
But the Oysters have it, so and I don't mind it. It's fine.
Does the Jubilee on the GMT Master not have it? It might have it. I'm not sure.
Oh,
the latest model
nowadays.
Okay,
I think it might. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm completely neutral to it. I don't mind if it's there, but I don't miss it when it's not.
No.
As long as it feels solid. I need to feel like a click and just to know that it's there.
Yeah, I think other brands did it as well. I think Tag Heuer also had these flip locks. I think.
They were very popular in the folded clasp era. That's just about every brand had it, and that was when also the way that it would lock would be it just would kind of. The metal lip would go over a bar, and then of course that's not like the most secure. If you do pull hard enough, it's gonna open. These systems are a little bit more like there's a like a pin that goes into a thing that sort of grabs it with spring loaded, so it's a little bit more secure. But it's it's interesting how many possible methods there are. But cool. So
There's
I think
one more thing. By the way.
Go for it.
Really
Thomas.
crucial.
One more thing,
and then we'll go
to
our comment of the week.
All right.
Yes.
Taper.
Oh yeah, of course.
I cannot stand a non-tapering bracelet. It looks so weird and it feels uncomfortable. I just don't like it.
For me, it depends on the watch.
Okay.
For a long time, I felt that all bracelets should taper, so I agree.
Your Ploprof is
except for divers watches.
Yeah.
So I always could live with the fact that the 300M had a straight bracelet. I think on the current 300M, okay, they should taper it. But also, like the Ploprof, it's fine that it doesn't taper at all. So there are some exceptions, but in general, I do agree.
Or even just a subtle taper, because I believe this goes from 20 to 18, something like that.
As long as it tapers,
you almost
it's
don't
good.
see it. But I do agree that like we could look at, of course, the Speedy has quite a taper these days, and also the Diver 65 from Oris has probably the most
20 to 14, right?
20 to 14,
same as the Gold Speedmaster, and the regular Speedmaster is 15, I think.
Okay, interesting. So the gold one's a bit slimmer, but that gives it definitely like a very vintage vibe, but at the same time, then you have a very thin, slim thing. I do agree that a bit of taper is preferred for me as well. I would say that even applies, as much as I love NATOs, that's kind of, I'm like, it's a bit, they do feel a bit clunky, especially when you're then wearing a nice tapering leather strap.
I see a design challenge for you. Like
a tapering NATO? Yeah. My God. Yeah. That's maybe someday. Maybe someday, maybe in another.
And then you can start a podcast, The Tapered NATO.
The Tapered NATO. Yeah. Excellent. We'll now use that to get to our to the commands, the comment of the week, which comes from Unseen Hero, and it was on our podcast about limited editions that we did last week, where he says, I never paid attention to the fact that the limited edition Speedy that RJ mentioned was the first titanium Speedmaster. You learn new things all the time.
Yeah, there you go.
It was referring to the Apollo 11 45th anniversary. That's reference 311.62.42.30.60.001.
Correct.
I wrote it down. That wasn't for those listening. That was very much not off the top of my head. So perfect. Thanks, guys, for the interesting discussion on bracelets. Thank you for the suggestion for this discussion, of course. And if anybody has any additional suggestions, any topics that they'd like for us to discuss, please leave it in the comments down below, as well as your thoughts. And of course, tune in next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then.